All right, so listen to this.
Okay.
We've got a request for a deep dive on this Dr. Philip Baldeo. He's a Guyanese-American doctor and businessman.
Oh, wow.
And he's making headlines for some big investments back in Guyana.
Okay.
But there's also this buzz around his connections and legal troubles.
Interesting.
This is going to be juicy.
Yeah.
So let's dive in.
So what do we know about him?
Well,
like background-wise?
From what we've gathered,
Yeah.
he's been a practicing physician in New York City for over 35 years.
Okay.
He's a U.S. citizen, but he's originally from Guyana.
Okay.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
He's pouring millions into Guyanese real estate.
Really?
Yeah.
That's quite the side hustle.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about companies like HRL Development, Inc.,
Okay.
Luxury Investment, and even some unnamed ventures.
Interesting.
His projects stretch from the Heroes Highway to Ogle,
Okay.
with a massive development in Richmondville.
Right. Well,
Oh, by the way, when we say scheme in this context,
Yeah.
we're talking about a housing development in Guyana.
gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that. I was
Yeah.
wondering about that.
So this is where it gets interesting.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Dr. Baldeo claims that his motivation is purely philanthropic.
Really?
He says he wants to give back to Guyana, alleviate poverty, all that good stuff. But then you have these accusations of human trafficking
Oh.
and some financial links that raise eyebrows.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of accusations are we talking about?
Well, there's a lawsuit filed against him in the U.S.
Okay.
alleging abuse, harboring an illegal immigrant, and underpayment.
Wow. Serious stuff.
Yeah.
So what does he say about all that?
Well, he denies employing the person,
Okay.
saying he was a subcontractor who also had other jobs. And get this,
What?
he insists the lawsuit was settled and withdrawn.
Really?
Yeah, suggesting there was no basis to the claims.
Hold on a second.
Yeah,
A settlement doesn't automatically equal innocence, does it?
that's true.
It could just mean they settled out of court, you know,
Right.
for various reasons, like to avoid a trial or, bad publicity.
Yeah,
It doesn't erase the fact that these allegations were made.
you're right.
I mean, there are claims about this worker living on his property
Yeah,
during COVID, doing odd jobs, and allegedly for less than minimum wage.
yeah, that does raise some red flags.
It doesn't exactly scream philanthropy, does it?
Not really.
So what about those financial links you mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about Ed Ahmad.
Oh, okay.
He's a convicted real estate fraudster in the U.S.,
Uh-oh.
and Dr. Baldeo admits to directly investing in one of his companies.
Whoa.
Yeah,
So wait a minute. Ahmad's a convicted fraudster,
that's right.
meaning he's probably barred from real estate activity,
That's exact.
and Baldeo's investing with him?
Yeah.
That's a huge red flag.
I know, right?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Did Baldeo know about the restrictions on Ahmad? Could this be some way to funnel illegal funds?
It's possible.
Wow, this is getting shady.
Oh, and it gets even shadier.
Oh, no, how?
So Baldeo says that if any illegal activity comes to light, he'll withdraw his funds.
Yeah.
Claims all his Guyanese projects are personally funded with money transferred from his U.S. bank accounts. Sounds legit, right?
Well, maybe.
But when the interviewer asked about specifics, like capitalization, share issuance, financial records,
The nitty-gritty?
yeah,
Okay.
Baldeo kind of dodged the question.
Really?
Yeah, it said he'd have his lawyer provide details later.
Classic deflection tactic.
Right.
Makes you wonder what he might be hiding.
Exactly.
So much for transparency.
Okay, so let's move on to his political ties.
All right, let's hear it.
He openly admits to donating to both major Guyanese political parties in the past, mainly through channels in New York City.
So diaspora engagement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he specifically mentions helping the current ruling party. Okay.
The PPP.
Yeah.
Get into power.
Interesting. There's a but, isn't there?
There's always a but.
Okay.
He also claims he hasn't donated to any party since 2020.
So, which is it?
Yeah,
Did he influence the election without any financial contributions?
it doesn't really add up.
No, it doesn't.
He tries to explain it by saying
Yeah.
he encouraged the Guyanese diaspora to support the PPP.
But even then,
Yeah,
that's still a form of influence, isn't it?
it definitely is.
It's
Yeah,
like,
okay.
did he exert undue influence? Did he leverage his position to push people toward a specific party?
Right.
And how does this tie into his business dealings in Guyana?
Yeah,
Is there a quid pro quo situation here?
it makes you think.
It really does.
Now, he does claim that he's pro-PPP
Okay.
because he believes they're the best for Guyana's future. He even throws some shade at the previous administration.
Oh, really?
Yeah, calls him a failure.
So he's got strong political leanings.
It seems so.
Even though he also says...
Yeah, that he's willing to work with any government, regardless of party.
Right, to help Guyana.
Do his actions match his words?
That's a good question.
It doesn't seem like it.
So let's talk about the Richmondville development for a second.
Okay.
This is where things get even more complicated.
All right, I'm listening.
Residents there filed a lawsuit
Okay.
because of neglected roads.
What?
Yeah, and the court actually ordered him to fix them.
Oh, wow. So he's not fulfilling his obligations as a developer,
It seems that way.
despite all his talk about giving back to the community.
Right.
That's interesting because in Guyana, the Central Housing and Planning Authority,
Oh, the CHPA?
yeah, they play a major role in land development.
Okay.
They're responsible for things like infrastructure and making sure basic standards are met.
So this lawsuit suggests he dropped the ball.
Yeah, pretty much.
And to add to that,
Yeah.
he claims that the government is now fixing those roads,
Really?
even though the court order was directed at him.
Oh, so he's passing the buck.
It seems so.
It raises questions about accountability
Yeah.
and whether he's truly committed to the well-being of those people.
Now, despite all this controversy, Dr. Baldeo insists his motives are purely philanthropic.
Is that so?
He talks about wanting to alleviate poverty,
Okay.
provide education, support orphans, and help battered women.
Those are admirable goals.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the question remains,
What's that?
are his actions driven by genuine altruism? Or is this a calculated attempt to build his image while pursuing personal gain?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's not just talk. He's got all these grand plans, like establishing an Afro-Guyanese restaurant on Heroes Highway
Okay.
to promote cultural appreciation and economic development.
That sounds promising.
He even talks about eradicating
What is
racism,
that? Okay.
diabetes,
Right, yeah.
all these major issues facing Guyana.
Those are some lofty goals.
Right.
They seem incredibly ambitious, almost unrealistic.
Maybe he's overpromising.
Yeah, maybe it's a way to deflect attention from the more questionable aspects of his business dealings.
Exactly.
Like he's trying to present himself as a savior, a solution to all of Guyana's problems.
the one-man solution.
Right. But we need to look beyond the grand pronouncements
Yeah.
and scrutinize his actions. Do they match his rhetoric?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Land deals,
Yep.
political ties, legal troubles,
Yeah.
and claims of philanthropy.
It's a lot to process.
Dr. Baldeo certainly paints a complex picture, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
He's got the successful businessman persona, the generous philanthropist,
Yeah.
and now the subject of some serious accusations.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly.
And that's what makes this deep dive so intriguing.
Right.
We've only just started to peel back the layers of his story.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to uncover.
I can't wait to see what else we find.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back
Okay.
and ready to unpack more of this Dr. Baldeo saga.
Yeah, let's dig deeper.
Last time, we left off with some serious questions about his finances and those connections.
Right.
Let's get into his response to the human trafficking accusations.
Okay, good place to start.
So he spends a good chunk of the interview talking about his experience
Yeah.
as a successful Black immigrant in the U.S.,
Okay.
highlighting the challenges and discrimination he's faced, particularly in real estate.
Interesting.
He even claims he was targeted for allegedly violating Airbnb regulations.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened there?
He says it unfairly tarnished his reputation,
Okay.
despite his efforts to help the Guyanese community in New York.
So he's playing the victim card,
It kind of seems that way.
trying to garner sympathy.
He really emphasizes that uphill battle, almost like he's trying to justify any potential missteps
Right.
by saying, look, I've had to overcome so much already,
Yeah. Yeah, the classic rags to riches story.
but with a twist of alleged injustice.
Right. So what do you think?
Yeah,
Is there some truth to that? Or is it strategic?
it's a good question.
It's a compelling narrative for sure.
It is?
He wants us to see him as someone who's fought hard
Yeah.
for everything he's achieved. But it also raises the question,
What's that?
is he using this narrative as a shield
Okay.
to deflect scrutiny from his actions?
It's possible.
We need to be careful
Yeah.
not to get swept up in the story.
All right, because then he goes on to address the specific accusations in the lawsuits,
Yeah.
claiming that the person in question was never his employee,
Oh, really?
just a subcontractor who did odd jobs
Okay.
and had other sources of income. He says he offered the worker a place to stay during COVID
Okay.
out of compassion, as the worker wanted to be closer to his child.
Hold on a minute.
What?
If this guy was just a subcontractor,
Yeah.
why was he living in Baldeo's property?
All right.
And if Baldeo was so concerned about his well-being,
Yeah,
why was he allegedly paying him below minimum wage?
that's a good point.
It doesn't add up.
It really doesn't.
It seems like he's trying to have it both ways.
Right.
Compassionate landlord, but also exploiting cheap labor.
Okay, but then he doubles down,
Oh.
saying the lawsuit was settled and withdrawn,
Really?
implying that the accusations were baseless.
But we've been over this.
Yeah.
A settlement doesn't necessarily mean innocence.
I know.
It could just mean they wanted to avoid a messy trial or, bad publicity.
Right.
The fact remains that these accusations were made.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore them.
He does seem particularly upset about the accusations,
Okay.
arguing that he's being targeted because he's a successful Black professional.
Interesting.
He then pivots to highlight all his philanthropic work,
I see.
emphasizing his commitment to helping fellow Guyanese.
So he's playing that card again.
It's like he's saying, look at all the good I've done. How could I possibly be guilty of these things?
It's a clever tactic.
It is.
Playing on both his race and his achievements
Yeah.
to try and garner sympathy and deflect criticism.
Right.
But it also makes it difficult to
Yeah.
separate his genuine acts of charity
Okay.
from potential ulterior motives.
We have to be careful about that.
Exactly.
He keeps circling back to this idea
Yeah.
that he wants to contribute to Guyana's development.
Okay.
No matter who's in power, he offers his expertise
Okay.
in housing, healthcare, anything they need.
So he's positioning himself as indispensable,
It seems so.
regardless of who's running the country.
He paints himself as this selfless figure who just wants to make Guyana a better place.
It's a tempting image.
Yes.
This successful Guyanese American
Yeah.
coming back to uplift his homeland. But we can't forget the allegations,
Right.
the shady financial ties, the political maneuvering.
It's a lot to consider.
Is this genuine goodwill or a calculated move to gain power and influence?
Good question.
We need to keep that in mind as we go forward.
Absolutely. Wow, that was a wild ride.
It really was.
This Dr. Baldeo deep dive,
Yeah.
it's full of twists and turns.
I know, right?
Land deals,
Yep.
political connections,
Yeah.
human trafficking accusations, and then these grand claims of philanthropy.
It's a lot to take in.
It's hard to keep up.
It is.
He's like a chameleon,
Yeah,
constantly shifting his persona
Right.
to fit the situation.
Exactly.
Successful businessman,
Yep.
champion of the people, victim of circumstance.
He plays them all.
He's a smooth talker,
He really is.
dodging tough questions, spinning narratives,
Yeah.
appealing to our emotions.
He knows what he's doing.
But after all this, I'm left with this nagging question.
But that,
Can we really separate his desire to help Guyana from his potentially questionable business practices?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Can someone be both a philanthropist and a profiteer?
Right.
It's a gray area.
Yeah.
No easy answers.
This whole deep dive has really highlighted
Yeah.
the complexities of diaspora investment,
Absolutely.
this pull to give back to your homeland, to make a difference.
Right.
But then there's the allure of power,
Uh-huh.
the potential for exploitation, the constant struggle for accountability.
It's a messy mix.
It really is.
And you know what makes it even more complicated?
What's that?
Dr. Baldeo clearly believes his own narrative.
You think so?
Yeah. He genuinely seems to think he's doing good.
Even if his actions suggest otherwise.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating psychological puzzle.
It really is.
And this story's far from over.
Oh, yeah.
There are investigations, legal battles,
Right.
probably even more revelations.
Waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah. It's like peeling back layers of an onion.
I know, right?
Just when you think you've reached the core,
Yeah.
you find another layer.
It's crazy.
So what do you think? What's the most important takeaway for our listener?
I think the biggest lesson here
Okay.
is to be skeptical.
Uh-huh.
Don't just take someone's word for it,
Right.
no matter how charismatic
Yeah.
or well-intentioned they seem.
Okay.
Dig deeper, ask tough questions,
Right.
Demand transparency.
Transparency is key.
It is.
And remember, money can be a powerful motivator.
Oh, absolutely.
It can fuel genuine altruism, but it can also mask self-serving interests.
Absolutely.
It's up to each of us to discern the difference.
We can't just assume good intentions.
Nope.
We have to look at the whole picture.
This deep dive has been a masterclass in critical thinking.
I agree.
We've encountered contradictions, evasions, and those glimmers of good intentions.
Right.
It's left us with more questions than answers.
It has.
But that's precisely what makes it so thought-provoking.
Exactly.
So for our listener out there, we encourage you to continue exploring Dr. Baldeo's story.
Absolutely.
Read the full interview, research his ventures, form your own conclusions.
Don't just take our word for it.
What do you think is driving him? Is he a genuine force for good or a shrewd operator playing a complicated game?
That's a tough call.
It is.
And here's a final thought to chew on.
Okay, I'm listening.
What is the true measure of a philanthropist?
Good question.
Is it the amount of money donated? The scale of the projects?
Okay.
Or the purity of their intentions?
That's a tough one.
It is.
And how do we navigate those tricky situations where good intentions might intersect with personal gain?
It's a real dilemma.
It is.
Something to think about.
This deep dive has been a journey.
It has.
Into the murky waters of power, money, and philanthropy.
It's a story that'll stay with you.
I think you're right.
It makes you question everything.
It does.
So until next time, keep those critical thinking skills sharp. Never stop questioning.
That's great advice.
I think so.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners. Until next time.
Stay curious.
We'll see you then.